Subscribe for more stories and show your support by giving this video a thumbs up. Milo and the World of Giants, the smallest dinosaur's big heart. Deep in the prehistoric ages, in the Great War Valley where volcanoes puffed smoke and massive trees touched the sky, life was huge. Dragonflies were as big as eagles, and mushrooms were as wide as umbrellas. And of course, the dinosaurs. They were like walking mountains. But not everyone was big. Under the thickest ferns of the valley lived a tiny dinosaur named Milo. Milo was a microraptor. That meant he was about the size of a chicken. He had emerald green feathers, tiny claws, and huge, curious eyes. Milo's biggest problem wasn't his size. It was his loneliness. He would wake up in the morning, preen his feathers, and say, "Today I will find a friend." But this wasn't as easy as he thought. Because the other dinosaurs in the valley were so big that most of the time, they didn't even notice Milo. That morning, Milo went down to the riverbank. There he saw Oliver. Oliver was a young brachiosaurus, long neck. He was so tall that when Milo looked at him, he thought his head disappeared into the clouds. Oliver was eating the delicious leaves at the very top of a tree. Milo went up to Oliver's giant foot. He took a deep breath and shouted with all his might, "Hello! I'm Milo. Do you want to play?" But to Oliver, Milo's voice sounded like the buzzing of a fly in the wind. Squeak! Oliver continued chewing. Milo didn't give up. He started jumping to get Oliver's attention. He even tried to climb the tip of Oliver's tail. Just then, Oliver decided to take a step. Thud! The ground shook. Milo lost his balance and tumbled into a mud puddle. Splat! As Oliver walked away, Milo watched him with a muddy face. "I guess he didn't hear me," he said sadly. After cleaning himself up, Milo decided to try his luck elsewhere. In the rocky area, he saw Bella and Spike. They were triceratops, three-horn, twins. With the shields on their heads and the horns on their noses, they looked like walking tanks. Bella and Spike were playing a game they called rock rolling. They were pushing a massive boulder toward each other, clashing against it. Crack! Bam! Milo ran to them excitedly. "Hey! That game looks so fun! Can I play too?" Bella lowered her huge head and looked at Milo. She narrowed her eyes. "You?" Bella said, laughing. "But little one, this rock is 10 times your weight. You'll get squashed." Spike laughed too. "Yeah, featherball. Go chase butterflies. This game is for heavyweights. Milo's heart was broken. "But I'm fast," he said in a quiet voice. "Speed doesn't move the rock," said Bella, and they went back to their game. Milo walked away with his head hung low. He had never felt so small. "Maybe they're right," he thought. "I'm just a feather ball. No one wants to be friends with a feather ball." In the afternoon, silence fell over the valley. The dinosaur youngsters had gathered at the Great Valley Square. There was great excitement in the center. Milo hid behind a fern and watched them. Oliver, Longneck, Bella, Three-Horn, and Rex, a young T-Rex, had formed a circle around something. In the middle stood a rare, shining golden melon. This fruit was very scarce in the valley, and it was said to taste sweeter than honey. "Whoever found it should share it," said Oliver. Let's play catch me with it, said Rex. The winner gets the first bite. The game began. They were throwing the golden melon to each other, trying to catch it in the air. The fruit floated in the air, sparkling in the sunlight. Milo sighed from afar. He wanted to be in that circle, to touch that fruit. Rex threw the fruit a little too hard. Catch it, Oliver, he shouted. But even though Oliver's neck was long, his reflexes were a bit slow. The fruit passed over Oliver's head. It bounced on the ground and rolled, and rolled. And it fell into a narrow, deep cave entrance called the dark crevice at the edge of the valley. The dinosaurs froze. They all ran to the edge of the crevice. The fruit was shining deep inside the narrow tunnel, about 5 meters down. I'll get it, said Rex. He reached out his arms. But T-Rex arms. Well, you know, they were quite short. I can't reach. Move over, said Oliver. He tried to stick his long neck into the hole. But the entrance to the cave was too narrow. Oliver's head wouldn't fit. I thought I got stuck, he said, pulling his head back. Bella used her horn, but it was no use. The golden melon was there. They could see it, but they couldn't get it. The beautiful fruit is gone, said Bella sadly. It will stay there forever. Their massive bodies, strong muscles, and terrifying roars were useless against this small hole. Milo had seen everything from his hiding place. His heart was pounding. Now is the time, he said to himself. Be brave, Milo. He stepped out from the ferns and walked among the giants. I can get it, he said. His voice was trembling, but this time, it was heard. Rex, Oliver, and Bella looked down. They saw Milo. You, said Rex. Tiny bird? Yes, said Milo. That hole is like a tunnel for me. I can go inside and bring the fruit to you. Bella looked skeptically. But it's dark in there. And maybe there are spiders. Milo gulped. He hated spiders. But his desire to make friends was bigger than his fear of spiders. I'm not afraid, said Milo. He was actually a little afraid. The dinosaurs looked at each other. They had no other choice. All right, little one, said Oliver. Give it a try. Milo came to the edge of the crevice. He took a deep breath and dove into the darkness. It was cool and damp inside. Milo began to climb down, holding onto the rocks with his tiny claws. His eyes adjusted to the darkness. Shadows of the giants were cast from above. Are you okay? Shouted Oliver from above. His voice echoed. I'm okay, squeaked Milo. As Milo went down, the tunnel got narrower. If Oliver or Bella were here, they would never fit. But for Milo, this was like a wide corridor. Finally, he reached the bottom. The golden melon was sitting on a stone. Milo approached the fruit. The fruit was almost as big as Milo himself. I found it, shouted Milo. Great. Now can you throw it up? Asked Rex. Milo tried to lift the fruit. It was heavy. It was impossible to throw it up. He thought. He looked around. There were long, sturdy vine roots on the ground. Milo had an idea. Hey, shouted Milo upwards. The fruit is too heavy. You need to help me. How can we help? We can't fit, said Bella. "Don't come in," said Milo. "Just lower your tail." "Whose tail is the thinnest?" Milo's plan was clever. Since he was a microraptor, he knew how to tie knots and bind objects, because he used to build nests. Those above argued. "My tail is too thick," said Oliver. "Mine is spiky," said Spike. "Mine," said Rex. The tip of the young T-Rex's tail was relatively thin. Rex turned around and dangled his tail down the hole. Milo was waiting below. When the tail reached his level, Milo tied the golden melon tightly to Rex's tail using the vines on the ground. He tied 1, 2, 3 knots. "Okay," shouted Milo. "Pull slowly." "Elevator going up," said Rex, starting to lift his tail. The fruit rose slowly. Milo climbed up after it. When the fruit surfaced, the dinosaurs cheered. "We did it," shouted Oliver. Rex untied the fruit from his tail. The fruit was perfectly intact. Milo climbed out of the hole, breathless. He was covered in dust and dirt, but he had a huge smile on his face. Bella approached Milo. This time she wasn't looking mockingly, but respectfully. "Wow," said Bella. "None of us could have done that. You were really amazing." "Yes," said Oliver. "Fitting into those holes must be a superpower." Rex split the golden melon into 4 pieces with his claw, or rather, his foot. He handed the biggest piece to Milo. "The hero's share," said Rex, smiling. "What was your name, little one?" Milo puffed out his chest. "My name is Milo." "Nice to meet you, Milo," said Rex. "You always have a place in my squad." That day, things changed in the Great Wall Valley. Milo and his new friends watched the sun set while eating their fruit. They no longer called Milo Featherball. They called him Cave Explorer Milo. Then they invented a new game. The name of the game was Giant and Spy. The big dinosaurs guarded the bases, while Milo, with his tiny size, passed between their legs, hid behind bushes, and played spy. No one could catch him because he was so fast and small that by the time the giants turned around, Milo had already escaped. When Milo returned to his nest under the ferns that evening, he no longer felt lonely. He looked at the stars. His height was still the same. He was still the size of a chicken. But his shadow cast on the wall in the moonlight looked like the biggest dinosaur in the valley. Because Milo had learned that friendship wasn't about measuring height, but measuring the heart. And Milo's heart was bigger than anyone's in that valley. The end.